Night one.
Easy. Go on to work now.
Hello and welcome to the Forge Debates Night 1. Tonight we are interviewing for our new Development Officer, Welfare Officer, Education Officer and our new SU President. It's going to be a very exciting night. Everyone's very nervous, but we're looking forward to it. So they'll be debating just out there, and we'll have some pundits in here, and after each debate we'll be discussing how the debates went and how our future officers are getting on. Yeah. We've got, I think, 4 candidates for most of the officers. And then for SU President, I think there are 6 different officers. And they're all going to be showing that. Oh, okay, well, we're ready to go live. So over to Sama for the debates.
To be hosting your student officer debates. So let's get started. We're going to do with the development officers debates. Okay, how's everyone doing? Everyone's all right?
Yeah, really good,
good.
thank you.
Love to hear that. So all of your manifestos, in one way or another, have a second-hand sale concept. With Kira, Jordan and Sophie swap shop, and Tara, you have your second-hand sale of books. In relation to the swap shop and textbook sales, what actions would you undertake to create the shop, and what are the logistics and the costs of this? Jordan?
So this is something that I feel so passionate about. Ever since I ran last year, I wanted to encourage reusability and recycling, and the logistics and investments will be big. I know that much. Exact figures, I won't lie to you, I cannot say. I don't think anybody could truly say at this point in time. But the overall argument for it is that investment needs to be made, and it needs to be a big investment. It's now time to stop wasting time with it, and as all of us can agree on this platform that it's now time to start investment. So the logistics and whereabouts it will be, that can be open to discussion. My candidacy, I've always said from the start, great leadership is about listening to others, and I'm happy to listen to others and where it should be and the logistics of it. But I feel like this investment needs to be made now. So,
Kira?
I think that, logistically speaking, I believe that the box office could be used to make space for it. And I think in terms of costing, I think it would be quite a good opportunity to employ some more students, and in that way we can financially support some more students at this university. I think that the swap shop would be a hit with the students. I mean, everyone's always talking about charity shopping. I think rejecting fast fashion is fashionable, so to speak, at the moment, and I think it would work really, really well logistically.
So you have said that it's more of would it be a charity shop?
I think that was one thing that I thought would be down to discussion. We could kind of decide what we kind of thought was best, but I'm definitely open. I think a charity shop would be a really, really good idea, and it would be, I think I put in my manifesto about goods as well as clothes, and I thought that students could by popular vote, decide either by semester or by year which charity they would like the funds from that to go to. And I think that would be a really great way to kind of increase the communication and the link between the students and the SU elected officials. So yeah.
How are you going to navigate charity laws to ensure that the SU, which itself is a charity, complies?
I think that would be something that we'd have to take quite seriously and look into and make sure that we were fully compliant before we kind of did that. But I expect it would be something with some hard work would be achievable.
Perfect, thank you. And Sophie?
Okay, so I think, as both of you have touched on, it's important that we address how bad the fast fashion industry is and encourage movement away from the fast fashion industry. That's why I'd as has been touched on, using the box office as a shop to sell second-hand clothes, I think would be a good idea, because currently the box office's use is becoming more and more redundant as people are using their U-cards for tickets, and also there's a ticket printer at the front desk. So that is going to be removed at some point, and I think a second-hand clothing shop would be ideal for it. The reason I wanted to introduce a second-hand clothing shop rather than a swap shop is because the SU is a registered charity, as you've said, and it needs to work on a profit basis. So that's why I think selling clothes rather than swapping clothes, because otherwise it's important to make sure the charity works on a profit rather than a deficit. And also, just lots of people I know would be happy to donate clothes if they knew the money went back into the students. Obviously, if you created a charity shop, it would be hard with the laws in terms of using the space as a charity, because it is a registered charity, which is why I'd create the Mental Health Matters Fund for the money to go into, so that the money can go back into the students and also work on a profit rather than a loss.
So Sophie and Kira, you've both said that you get rid of the box office. Do you think that's a big enough space for it?
I definitely think it would be better if there was a larger space, but as an initial concept, definitely the box office would be big enough to see how it would run. If it's successful, then potentially part of the clothing shop in the SU could also be taken over for the second-hand clothing shop, because at the moment that's not very popular other than at varsity times or graduation times. And also it would be good to look into the ethical and sustainable sourcing of the clothes in there, because currently I think that needs a complete overhaul as well.
Kira, what's your take on that?
I agree that it would probably be appropriate even just for like a pilot to kind of see how it runs. And although I actually think the box office is adorable, I think it's kind of nice, the old-fashioned little tickets. It has a lot of paper that goes to it, and the film unit actually, they require that you buy a paper ticket, and I think that if we use the space of the box office for something else, it would kind of force them to a more sustainable paper-free option.
Tara, can you tell me more about your second-hand book sales?
Yeah, sure. So I've sort of deviated from the clothing shop situation. I'm more focused on sort of alleviating barriers to education. I think that although the libraries are really fantastic, we're really blessed here. So you do have to work under the assumption that this textbook can be recalled at any time. I don't think that's really great for encouraging, for example, healthy working habits. So what I propose is basically an online system in the SU, where on the SU website, whereby students can buy and sell textbooks. I know some departments and some societies do this within themselves. I'm proposing a single centralised system where all the parties can be sort of safeguarded a little bit more, prevent scammers, and if people need a textbook, they know where to go.
Perfect, thank you. So a big question is, for all of your policies, where will the money come from? Sophie, you have a Mental Health Matters Fund, and Tara, you've also suggested a sustainability fund. Where would the money come from for that stuff?
Okay, so as I said, the second-hand clothing shop would fund the Mental Health Matters Fund. I do think a Mental Health Matters Fund is completely necessary, not enough is being invested into it. And I know lots of other campaigners and candidates have also touched on mental health, but without a fund behind it, it's hard to actually implement these changes and actually address the pressing issue. Obviously, that is completely dependable on the second-hand clothing shop being passed and being implemented. But if not, as the SU Treasurer, I'd look into where the funding's put to different societies and still create a Mental Health Matters Fund by redistributing the money which goes to different committees.
Yeah, I'm sort of very similar to Sophie in that regard. To be quite frank, this is a really successful SU. We're the #1 in the country, and there is a lot of money in this SU. I don't think it's unreasonable to ask that some more of that money is put towards societies so that they can be rewarded for trying to achieve be more sustainable.
Kira and Jordan, how would you get the money for your policies?
I understand that the SU is actually working in a deficit at the moment, so I understand that this is a really important question. I think we would have to have a long conversation about our kind of priorities and where this is going to come from, and I think to give you the full answer, I would have to understand more about the financial and the finances within the SU. in order to answer that properly.
Yeah, for me, 100%, like the guys have said already, we do need to invest, and the only way that we will reap the benefits and gain money back and get out of a deficit is by investing. That's the only way you get out of our deficit. Mental health is a big issue at this university, and just because it's not on my manifesto doesn't mean I totally back everything that these guys are saying about mental health. As the financer of this SU, I would totally back any of the policies that these guys run on if I were to be elected. But the only way fundamentally to actually gain money and actually get out of a deficit is totally investing. Let's get that SU swap shop in, let's start investments, and let's reap the benefits. This SU makes so much money as it is from SU nights out, bar one, etc., etc. But as I said, investment, we need to do it now.
Jordan, what are the current issues for SU casual staff? You have said you would give them better terms and conditions. What does this mean, and how much of a pay rise would they get if so?
So last year and end of first year, I've been working for venues bar staff, and I know what it's like to work in this SU. I've worked there for such a long time and I've enjoyed every second of it. But I realise that SU staff are not getting paid fairly, and they're not getting the terms and conditions that they should be for being the best in the country. This SU is the best country. SU is the best in the country and has been voted that for many years. We need to give our staff members the best, and that means giving them a better living wage, giving them better holiday allowances, getting them better sick pay. It means all these things, and this SU needs to develop hand in hand with workers, and I'm so proud that I'm running on that, and I'm kind of disappointed that none of the other candidates on the stage have talked about workers and talked about the problem. It is a big issue, it's been publicised all over the place. I've been on the Unite campaign and I've been working hard and fighting hard for workers at this SU, and I hope that the candidates on this stage will realise the issues and realise that that policy should be taken forward whoever wins in this candidate's election.
How do you guys respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, Jordan, as you said yourself, just because it's not on my manifesto doesn't mean I don't believe in it. I absolutely think that a hard day's work should be rewarded with a fair day's pay, and currently for example, the pay for the SU shop staff is underneath the real living wage, and I just don't think that's acceptable.
I think it's important as well. Obviously, you can only run on a certain number of policies, so that wasn't one of my main ones, but I also think it's important that local businesses as well are completely underpaying staff. There's even worse hours and worse working conditions, so I'd focus on partnering up with local businesses to make sure that the students at this university who work for them also have better working and living conditions, because in comparison to lots of my friends who work at local places, their living and working conditions are a lot worse than the SU staff themselves.
So your focus would just be on local businesses or both?
It would be on both, definitely. It would definitely be on bettering the SU working here. I'd definitely make sure that the staff are well paid and their working conditions and hours are fair, but also I would like to work in the local community to make sure that students who work in the local community are also paid fairly under fair conditions as well.
In response to this, I definitely do care about workers' rights, and it was actually mentioned in my campaign video. I have been a casual worker many times and completely understand the kind of difficulties that come with this, especially with regards to sick pay and taking holiday pay. I would like to ensure that the SU staff are paid the national living wage, and I feel like as an SU of such an important institution, we are in a really good position to kind of lead the way on this, and this SU is one which should be taking those kinds of measures.
So, as potential development officers, what policies would you implement in order to reduce plastic at the SU?
Well, I think one of my key policies is the plastic-free meal deal. I think it's really needed. I think an important part of sustainability in the SU should be convenience. There are loads of other outlets around here. If we don't make sustainability convenient for the consumer, they will simply go elsewhere. And I'm a big believer in this. So although I think taking the water bottles out of meal deals, for example, is a really good idea in theory, I think lots of other students like me need a sort of sugar fix or a caffeine fix during, the lunchtime hours. They will go elsewhere for that. I think my plastic-free meal deal concept is really feasible and can actually attract more people to the SU, because even the most zero waste conscious people sometimes forget to bring a lunch.
As Tara touched on, I would introduce meal deal offers which don't include a drink, because often people will buy a meal deal daily, which means they're buying a single-use plastic bottle daily just because it's cheaper than buying just the sandwich and the crisps. I do understand your point in terms of the plastic-free meal deal, but plastic-free doesn't mean a lower carbon footprint. Often biodegradable packaging or cardboard packaging can have a higher carbon footprint than the plastic alternative. So I think it's important to look into the logistics and the carbon footprint of the meal deal rather than just the plastic content of it, and also how you would then dispose of this, because you'd have to expand the food waste storage at the SU and also around the university if you were to implement this.
Well, one of my policies is to introduce microwaves into study spaces, which I think would encourage students to kind of prepare their lunches at home, and then obviously Tupperware is more than one kind of use, and I think that this would completely remove obviously lots of plastic come from food, as has been touched on by the other candidates, and I think that would go a long way into sorting that out.
We'll touch on the microwaves in a second.
Okay.
Jordan?
Yeah, one of my policies, it suggests that, and this is something I totally back, by tapping into the potential of every single student in our university and really getting the knowledge from them on the issue of plastic usage. It needs to end somewhere, but how we end it and the knowledge that we have at this university is vital to how we actually end this. And that's why I want to open up a student and staff inquiry on how we tackle this issue. I haven't got the answers for how we can get around plastic usage in our SU venues, but I am strong enough and I am willing enough to go out there and ask our student populace. Like I said right from the start, great leadership is about listening to others, and that is something I'm definitely willing to do. I want to listen to everybody and ensure everybody's got a voice, and that is something that needs to fundamentally happen. If we want to become more sustainable, we need to be in this together, and we will be in this together.
Thank you. Kira, coming back to you. You said that you want to do microwaves in study spaces. People already say that study spaces are already quite confined and quite small. Where will the space be made for it when there is not already a lot of it there? And also, you need a dedicated kitchen area to comply with regulations. What are you willing to lose in order to allow students to heat up food?
I think that changing out the vending machines, which are in so many of our study space buildings, and changing those for kind of like a cupboard with a microwave in would be far more useful for students. And the thing about building a kitchen, I think a small room, almost like a walk-in cupboard, would kind of be appropriate. I actually did my first year at another university which had successfully implemented this. I know it's been in a lot of other candidates' manifestos in previous years and hasn't been able to be done, which I think is testament to how popular of a policy it is. I have seen it work, and I think I can make it happen.
Thank you. Tara, in your manifesto, you said that you want to have a mobile U-card. This has been every development officer's manifesto for at least 3 years, with Harry Carling, which is the development officer for 2019 to 20, and Jake Verity, which is the president for 29 to 20, currently working on this. This issue has structural problems in the university and the SU. Why are you the person to carry this out?
Well, firstly, I just think it's about time. We're a really modern SU, number one in the country, as I've said before. No one else is going to do this before us, except us. You know, we all have to be the ones to do it. I'm quite dedicated to delivering on it. I think also as time has progressed, technological advancements have been made, whereas maybe in the previous years where the idea first initially came up, there wasn't really the technology for it. Now there's startups, there's fully fledged companies that can provide those services. In terms of why I think I'm the woman to deliver it, I think I'm really determined. I don't sort of half-heartedly do policies. I do what I think I can do and I know I believe in. And a mobile U card is one of them.
Thank you. Sophie, in your manifesto, it was touched on housing. In there, you spoke about having a form of such that shows reputable landlords. Lillian Jones, SU President of 2018-2019, launched a housing forum marked out of Tennessee this year, with little interest and uptake. What is different about your take on this?
Okay, so I set up a student housing forum in conjunction with Smart Move Sheffield, which is the current Sheffield University housing forum. There's currently already interface for people on there to find new housemates, which I've used myself, and it's been successful to find housemates to live with. It also on the page, there's landlords which have been registered on the Green Impact Home Scheme. So through people using the forum to encourage landlords to better their standards on the Green Impact Home Scheme in terms of environmentally friendliness and also safety standards. So the interface is there, it's just not currently being used. And I think we're unique in Sheffield that we've got more student housing than we have students. So we have the opportunity to push landlords to actually better the standards of student housing, because it might just be from my personal experience, but my student housing has been horrific at times. So I think definitely it would push for landlords to better this. And I think publicity is key. If people know this is a thing to use, they're more likely to use it.
Thank you. Jordan, you are rerunning. What have you changed since last year that you feel puts you in a better position this year?
I'd say a lot more experience. I know a lot more people as well, and I don't think that's one of the main things, but I feel like I am passionate, more driven. After last year's defeat, I became more driven instantly. I love Harry. Harry's a great guy, and when I seen him up on the stage, it was thoroughly deserved that he won. I wanted to come back instantly when I left that SU on that night, and I made a statement there and then that I will be running again. And that's just testament to how passionate I am about this role and how much I care about our SU. I've changed in loads of different ways. I've learnt a lot more. I've been a part of more campaigns. I've fought against education inequalities. I've fought for better workers' rights at this SU. And I've fought against the big problem, which is climate change. And I'm here to do that again, and that's why I'm running again. So I'm really passionate and I'm ready to go again.
Thank you. Kira, you have said that you want to invest in solar and wind energy in your manifesto. How would that work? Where would the solar panels go, and how much would this cost?
I think that in terms of real estate, the University of Sheffield and RSU have vast amounts of this town. Definitely lots of it would be extremely efficient in terms of solar, for example, and I think it would be a great thing to do. In terms of costs, I have seen that it would pay for itself relatively quickly. I cannot give you the exact figure of how much we would need to invest initially.
You've also mentioned wind energy. Can you please expand on that?
So it's windy up around here in Sheffield, and I think that there are lots of kind of niche schemes that Sheffield has, you know, nice little things such as the Sheffield University honeybees, and I think it would be really a nice thing and something that I think we could all be proud of a Sheffield University wind farm, and something that pays back very quickly.
What do you guys think that is your best policy to move sustainability forward in the SU?
Okay, me first. So I'd actively lobby the university on its sustainable promises, some of which will be immediate, such as switching to clean energy, because its energy provider, its contract is up in September, so that would be something I'd get on straight away to ensure that they do this, working with Clean Energy Switch and also the Energy Task and Spinach Group. They're currently looking into the logistics, like financially, of either changing to clean energy or offsetting this with a wind farm, which you've suggested, looking into areas which this could possibly be built, just to see which method would be financially cheaper, because the university, although we don't like to think about it, they do work on a profit, and they don't like to invest in certain things. They want to make sure that whichever option they choose is the cheapest. So encourage them to spend lots and lots of money on something is a lot harder than you may think. So I do that. I'd carry on the work I'm currently doing with Suscom and Carbon Neutral Society to ensure that they actually follow through with their promises.
Thank you. Tara?
Well, my policies are a bit more student-based and student-focused, and I really think that one of the best faces of our SU is our societies. I think I'm very confident in saying no other SU has such a fantastic variety of different societies that continue to represent the SU. Therefore, I think my Sustainabilities Fund is a really good idea. I think knowing firsthand the experience of running a society, I think having extra money to allow societies to spend on more sustainable things, such as, off the top of my head, I can think that recycled paper for posters and other sort of campaign or event material. Having nice, really glossy, shiny new posters is fantastic, but I'm not sure completely necessary, and as obviously someone who's concerned with sustainability, not something that I'm sort of really behind. So in that sense, I think the Sustainabilities Fund is really my best foot forward.
Thank you. Sorry, we're short on time. Jordan?
Sorry, say that.
Which one of your policies are the best for sustainability at the SU?
I think immediately off the cuff, divestment from fossil fuel energies is definitely something that needs to happen. From my first day in office, if I'm elected, that is something that I'll be attacking straight away to lobby the university. I've worked with against climate change with a lobbyist group in Sheffield. I've worked with the the Clean Energy campaign, and that is something that I am willing to do. I've lobbied MPs before. I want to lobby the hierarchy at this university. They've been twiddling their thumbs for far too long on fossil fuel energy usage. It's time to divest. So this is definitely something that's hot property, hot topic for my manifesto and my campaign.
Thank you. Kira?
Although quite a simple idea, I think the policy of mine, which would go the furthest in terms of maximising sustainability, would be to teach first-year students how to recycle effectively and compost effectively. The regulations in terms of recycling in Sheffield are definitely different to where I come from, and definitely different for all different councils all across the country and obviously the world. We have a large international student population here, and I think that seeing the wastage firsthand which goes on in student halls, people just don't know how to dispose of their waste properly, and I think that this would go a huge way in terms of that kind of capacity.
Thank you. This is the end of the Development Officers debate. We have had Tara, Sophie, Kira and Jordan speak to us. Now back to the punditry office with Emily.
Hello, welcome back.
Okay, guys, we're punditry right now, so you're not live.
It was really interesting, actually.
You've
So
all
we're
done
here
really
with
well
our
for the
pundits,
first
Sophie and
debate.
Jordan.
Don't worry
Hello.
about some mistakes. It
Rosie,
happens,
oh my
we're all
gosh, I'm so
getting
sorry.
to it.
I was looking at the candidates. I'm too invested. Rosie and Jordan. So we've just heard from Jordan, Kira, Sophie and Tara. Rosie is the name expert for today. It's confusing because it's Kira and Tara. But I thought they all did a really good job. What do you guys think of their demeanour?
Yeah, I thought everyone spoke really confidently, really coherently. I didn't feel that any place was and I think also we saw.
Yeah. What about you, Jordan? What do you think?
I think they held themselves well. It's not an easy thing to do, is it? To kind of fight for what you believe in, what you want to do for next year. So I think they held themselves well.
Yeah, it can be quite nerve-wracking. So I think they did a pretty good job.
Credit to all of them.
Yeah, definitely. So I think we should start off. I think one of the main things that most of them, especially Jordan, Kira and Sophie, had in their manifestos was about the swap shops and the idea of the clothing drives and things like that. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting to see that although obviously this is like a similar policy to all of them, that you see points of variation.
Yeah.
And especially the sort of tension between like a charity or a for-profit enterprise, right? And where that money ought to be going, like back to the students or to some kind of student-led cause. So it was nice to just see not the same policy repeated over and over again from different candidates. But I don't know. Oh, is my microphone not working? Well, I was about to pass over to you.
Oh, right. Yeah, no, I think it's a good idea. The clothes shop.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting about obviously their kind of opinions differ on where the profit goes to.
Yeah.
Obviously, we have Sophie. The profit kind of goes back into the mental.
SU.
Yeah, back into the SU.
Mm.
Another one back into the mental health matters fund. So,
Yeah.
but it's definitely a good idea because clothes, a second-hand shop for students. I mean, that would profit a lot of students, I think, who kind of need new clothes.
Especially in Sheffield, it's massive on thrifting and charity shopping and that kind of thing, I think.
Quite a few may not be able to afford brand new clothes because they can be expensive. So I think it's a good idea.
This is something I would be interested in, is looking at kind of suggested price points and that they'd be thinking about. I think the implication has been that it would be a little bit cheaper, like more affordable for students. But I definitely think like the idea of kind of like a charity shop, a clothes swap, I would want to be seeing more charity shop prices rather than say fancy kind of vintage like kind of prices is an important thing. So a lot of that will lie in how they brand it and pitch it. I think.
That's true. I think also Tara, she wasn't as involved in the clothing swap kind of thing, but she had an idea about books, about book swap. What do you guys think about that?
I'll go first. I'm holding the mic. I thought this was a really interesting idea. I think, I'm on my MA now, and when I graduated, I have a whole load of textbooks. I have like very little to actually do with, and I think it's a really good idea to think about how students can pass those on. I was a little bit unclear about whether she was suggesting to donate and then students could get that for free, or whether it was a reselling scheme. Now that just might be me of not understanding the policy.
I didn't understand that either, actually.
Yeah, again, it's a good idea. As I said, when people finish their course, a lot of spare textbooks. It's almost a shame for students in kind of younger years to have to go out and buy textbooks, which again are not. They are expensive.
Yeah.
It's money that you don't need to spend. So
yeah. Also, I get that
it's a good idea.
Yeah, it is a good idea. But a lot of our lecturers as well, they have written books that we then buy. Yeah. So we're kind of helping our lecturers out in that sense as well. So would it be kind of controversial?
Well, every lecturer that I've ever had that has set their own book has provided us with electronic copies free of charge. So I don't know if that's been me very fortunate with the lecturers that I've had, but I've not come across any that feel personally wounded by us not purchasing their books. Also, they're on slightly higher salaries than us, so I'm sure they would make admissions.
But I guess we are their kind of main buyers of those kind of books.
I feel like there's a lot of like academic interest in those kind of things as well. I think it's a little bit cynical to think that lecturers do set like courses, books of the course just to get a bit more money. But maybe if we're getting into those questions of whether lecturers are hard up and we ought to support them, we ought to look at who's paying their salaries and not what the students should be giving.
Very true, very true. So if we move on to kind of also how they invested the money from the swap shop. They wanted to kind of put the swap shop in the box office and get rid of the box office. What did you guys think of that idea of getting rid of the box office?
I mean, I think the box office is quite a key part of the SU, I think, personally. But, I mean, I guess that you need to make room for it somewhere, don't you, the shop? And it's kind of a matter of where do you put it otherwise. So I get why they've chosen the box office. I think that would go down well with some students. Others, particularly, maybe not, because box office is still quite a key part of the SU.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of the box office work has been moved over to the welcome desk now, though. Like every time I've gone to go tickets, I've had to go to the welcome desk. I know there are still some staff that work there, but more often than not, I do see it closed. So I do wonder how much that space is even being used at the moment, actually.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Very true. If we move on now to money, so they were talking about the staff and workers' rights, and how they, especially Jordan, he was saying that he'd worked with for the SU for many years, and how he thinks that they're being underpaid. What did you guys think about those kind of implications?
Well, I also work for the SU, and I'm really aware of the Unite Like Better Than Zero campaign. I think it's fantastic. It's actually been going for quite a few years, and with good reason. Because we're currently like very underpaid. Not even living wage, and most of the contracts are 0 hours. And I think he did really well to draw attention to those issues. And I was impressed to see him specifically reference the ongoing campaign.
I think it's important But let's not underestimate how hard the SU staff work as well.
Yeah.
For us students as well. So it's important that they're paid what they deserve.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, so it's a key policy.
I know we need to start wrapping up, so we'll just say that we didn't cover a lot of topics there. We kind of rambled on a bit at the start there, but the candidates did have some really great other ideas about sustainability, mental health. So yeah. So over to Sama now for the debate. Oh no, sorry, keep going. Okay, yeah. If you keep going, then what do you guys think?
Yeah, it's a key policy, the workers' rights, because as I said, they work so hard. The staff, no one should be underpaid for. It's almost like it's wasted hours, isn't it? I mean, if you work hard, you have to pay. You have to get the pay that you deserve. So
yeah,
I think it's unfair. It's definitely. It's a key policy. It's hard to know. Obviously, we don't know what they're paid, but the fact that he's worked there. You do.
Yeah.
So you do though. So you've had it kind of first-hand experience. Yeah. So you're probably more passionate about it than I am. But this is why it's interesting. Yeah, I think that could definitely get that candidate a lot of votes, to be fair.
I was interested to see as well, I think it was Sophie talking about, as well as working within the SU, working with businesses that employ a lot of students outside the SU as well. I think I'd be really interested to hear a little bit more detail about how she'd want to do that, because I do think it's really important that, you know, SU officers don't just set their limits inside the realms of like the four walls of the SU.
Yeah.
And it'd be interesting to see if she had any ideas about how she could synthesize the ongoing workers' rights campaign in the SU with ones outside as well that doubtless will exist in these places too.
Yeah.
So that was interesting to see her.
Yeah, that's really true. Yeah. Yeah, nice. They were talking about so plastic-free meal deals, getting rid of bottles in the SU. There's a lot. The drinks menu, if you will, in the SU is massive. The fridges are huge, and there's a lot of plastic bottles in there. What did you guys think about that? Of kind of getting rid of that? Yeah. If we just get a quick answer here because we're wrapping up now.
Okay, a plastic-free meal deal, I think, is a decent idea. I think we do need to be careful when we look at development policies about not just individualizing the problem and making it all about the consumers. So I think that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But it'd be interesting to see people looking at a slightly more structural scale to see about pressure they could put on the university, to deal with things at a slightly higher level.
Yeah, I think with these meal deals, there is a lot of plastic. If we look around on the menu in the SU shop, it could be scaled down. I don't know how much you can kind of get rid of it completely, but yeah, I think it's a bold policy.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a good one, and yeah, if that person gets it, it'd be interesting to see what they can do with it.
Yeah, definitely. Great. I think we're wrapping up now. Thank you very much for coming on and talking to us today, guys. I think we had some great points. So are we ready to go over to Sama for the next debate for welfare officer?
Hello and welcome back. I'm here with your welfare officer candidates. We have Elmo, Holly, Megan and Chris. How are you guys feeling? Good? Good. Yeah. Okay, so let's get started with the first question. Mental health is a key issue for a welfare officer. What policies would you implement to support mental health students?
So one of my key campaign points, which I like to tell people about when they ask about my manifesto, is I want more staff in the SU and university to be mental health first aid trained. I think there is a lot of issues where students will present with an issue towards a member of staff, and the member of staff might not pick up on the kind of things within that issue that signal this person needs some help beyond just themselves. And I think that would help pick some people up before their issues got into serious problems. I would also like to clarify the support that's available for mental health, because we have like brilliant support services on offer with the Student Advice Centre and University Counselling Service and University Health Service. But sometimes students don't know exactly how to access them, which one they should access, and what support would be given to them if they were to access these services.
Chris?
Yeah, so this is one of my main policies about reforming the budget for mental health. I want to hire more counsellors because that's where the action needs to be taken, and especially specialist counsellors, such as for PTSD, eating disorders. And then by doing so, it will reduce the waiting times. This is 100% doable, considering that the university has spent a large portion of money, which I think came from the 2018 strike money, on communications, on posters, and letting people know that these services exist, which is brilliant, but it's no good when the students go and they have to wait 6 weeks for an appointment. You know, we need to hire more specialists, and that's what my core policy is for mental health.
And so one of my big policies that I would really like to implement is a 24/7 talking service for mental health support. So I know that we've got Nightline, which is fantastic. We have fantastic volunteers who dedicate a lot of time to it and do night shifts, which I think is absolutely brilliant. And students being able to speak to other students confidentially about issues that they're going through is I think a really beneficial thing that we have. So being able to have that 24 hours support and just students knowing, like we've mentioned, that students sometimes don't know where to go for support, being able to know that they can ring that number anytime and they can be directed to the services that they need, or that if they just want somebody to speak to, then they can do that. I think that's brilliant. And also, like, I'm aware that if we train specialists, if we bring specialists in, that can be quite costly. Whereas if we've got volunteers who really want that experience and they're happy to dedicate their time, then I think that could be really sustainable.
Elma?
Yes, one of my policies to enhance the students' mental health is that to do the multilingual counseling, because some international students, they have the language barriers, and so when they go to the UCS University Counseling Service, and they are difficult to communicate to each other. Another policy is about increase the students' mental health is that we can also recruit more counselors to settle in each department, so it's more available to every student, like in medical or in sociological or in psychology department. We send every counselor to settle inside directly in the department, so it's very easy to reach to. And also I think it's a very about the queuing time, the other candidates mentioned about. I think there is a very fundamental problem, because I think the university authorities spend less money on the students' welfare. So one of my policies is also focus on the reinvest our tuition fees to the students' welfare.
Thank you. If you guys were elected, how would you collaborate with other committees and other welfare committees and other officers to achieve your aims?
So I think a big role of being welfare officer is collaboration, because it does involve many other sections of the offices and also just committees. Obviously, the welfare committee is excellent for things such as housing and creating programs to give access to students to finding housing affordable and housemates. And I want to obviously work very closely with the welfare committee, but then also with other officers. The women's officer, for example, has an eating disorder campaign, which very much encompasses the specialist aspects of counselling service, which I want to fund more of, and I'm definitely going to be working very closely with her if elected. But then some of my other policies, such as I want to create an SU student-run food bank, is great for tackling student food poverty, but then also at tackling sustainability and making the SU more of a sustainable institution, which obviously encompasses the development officer. And then also with mental health, there's a lot of president candidates who are a big focus on mental health, so no doubt be working with them. But then also with the university as a whole, because mental health at the end of the day is very serious when it comes to academic work, such as extenuating circumstance. People shouldn't be afraid to use extenuating circumstance, and the stigma around that should be lifted. And students need to be reassured that this is something they can actually do. So yeah, it's like quite a lot of collaboration with other departments. But like I said, that's what makes a welfare officer important.
Yeah, I totally agree. A welfare officer is not an isolated position and should be working with all of the different officers. So one thing I want to do is, although I myself have personal experience dealing and helping others deal with issues with housing and finance, mental health and sexual harassment, I'd never want to assume that I know how everybody feels and what everyone's going through. So I would want to work with every single representative committee to make sure I've got everybody's backs. I've had people come to talk to me on the on the concourse this week. Time flies. Who are mature students who said they've just been completely isolated and left alone by the university, and it makes them really upset. I'd want to work with the education officer again to clarify extenuating circumstances and make sure students know it's okay to go for them. I'd also want to work to improve module feedback, because I think a lot of people don't want to fill it in because they feel, well, what's the point of filling it in if it's not going to help them in any way? I'd want to work with the International Students Officer to promote the We Are Not a Virus campaign beyond the campus, because that's a massively growing welfare issue. And we don't want to see more racist-based attacks. And we also want to support students whose families might be in countries that are being really affected by the coronavirus. And I can only imagine how awful that must feel. I'd want to work with the activities officer as well to promote the inclusion of diversity weeks and months into society socials, because some of my societies have started doing that, and it's lovely and inclusive, and people start talking about things that they've never talked about before. And I'd want to work with the activities officer to support inclusions officers, because I've met so many students who are in positions to look after people's inclusions and welfare whose mental health has struggled so badly under the weight of trying to help other people, and I'd want to help make sure that we're not putting that pressure onto students and we're giving that assistance and not ignoring them or forgetting them.
Thank you. I'm really pleased that you asked that question, because I think it's really important. As chair of Welfare Committee, I'm very much involved in the committee, and I know the fantastic work that we do as volunteers. Welfare Committee is fantastic. We run lots of housemate finder events which are really successful. We have lots of people come in who either have a spare room or they're still looking for housemates, and seeing people find housemates through that and feel more comfortable and know that they're going to sort something out for next year is fantastic. So I would really like to continue working closer with the Welfare Committee if I got elected. And I know from working with Beren as the current welfare officer that the welfare officer and welfare committee do work together closely, and so I'd be really excited to carry on working with welfare committee and giving them support, as well as all other representative committees. Like one of my main policies is to avoid to actively work against discrimination, racism and homophobia, and so I would want to work with LGBT committee as well to tackle homophobia.
Alma?
If I'm elected successfully, I will meet the welfare committees regularly as usual, and I will also open one of the certain office hours every week, and it's a time slot, and every student can come to talk to me, and it's regular. It's very similar to students' assembly, and also I will lobby the university to fund committees, welfare committees more funding, and if welfare committees encounter some difficulties, I will remove the obstacles with them together. But I think most important thing is that I think every time the welfare committees meeting, we should open to every student, and every student is welcome to join. It's like a citizens assembly, and every week, the most important thing is that the university should spare more money to our welfare committees and our welfare staffs. Yeah, thank you.
Am I able to add something?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So I think that's something brilliant about Welfare Committee, that we are so inclusive and everybody can get involved. So even though we have action group leads who are elected onto the committee, absolutely anybody can take part as a volunteer as much or as little as they want to with helping with events and things. So I think that's brilliant. Yeah. And I also just wanted to add that I would like to work with all of the inclusions officers on the societies and take part in the training with them. Because as inclusions officer for Ice Skating Society, I know that it's a really good way to make sure that we're really accessible and really inclusive with every society by working with inclusions officers.
Thank you. Going to you, Chris, you touched on previously that you want to introduce a food bank. How will those who receive the food be tested? Would it be means tested?
No, because I think with food banks, there is a massive stigma attached to food banks in respect that people feel that they're either not eligible to use it or they feel ashamed to use it, which definitely has to be tackled, obviously not just at student union level, but everywhere. My idea with the food bank is all of the data is anonymized. So there is no way that any kind of like, it's a secret basically. Students who feel the need that they want food are be able to get it easily by proving that they are a student. But at the end of the day, though, food banks are accessible to everyone, so it shouldn't, you shouldn't have to declare if you're poor or struggling with money. Like the point and the intention of the food bank is to give free food away for those who need it. So obviously everyone will be welcome if they so choose to.
Thank you. Going to you, Holly, you said in your manifesto that you would reduce the price of food. How would that come about?
I would really like to work with the university itself. I'm aware that that's something that might be quite difficult because obviously the university is separate from the SU, but I think in particular the price of food in the uni cafes, in the libraries such as the IC, the Diamond and Western Bank, is quite expensive, and I think that's somewhere where it's really important that that food is cheap, and that if a student wants to get a cup of coffee that it is affordable and they don't feel like they can't afford to buy one because they're studying and they're in there for a reason. And I think having food and drinks that are accessible is really important. So yeah, I would go about that by getting in touch with the university itself and with staff members at the university and trying to implement that.
Thank you. On the topic of food, you said that you wanted to you said that you want to increase the vegetarian, vegan and gluten options. What would you add that already doesn't exist? There is already a good vegetarian range at all outlets, including an outlet that is just vegetarian and vegan, which is View Deli.
Yeah, I agree. And I think View Deli is brilliant, but I'm aware that in the as I mentioned, in the cafes such as in the IC and the Diamond, the range of vegetarian and vegan and gluten-free and lactose-free products are very limited, and often some of my friends who are lactose intolerant, for example, have told me that often the products run out quite quickly on a morning, and so if they turn up at lunchtime or for a late lunch, they often don't have the things that they want there. So although View Deli is brilliant, I think it's really important to make sure that there is a good variety of food in the cafes that are vegetarian and vegan and gluten-free as well.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Yes, of course.
I definitely think like vegan and vegetarian options are a brilliant thing that the SU does, and there is a lot of it. But I don't think it is as important in respect to like reducing the prices, because yes, you're right, in the IC and the cafes there are items which are expensive, but I don't necessarily think that it is extortionately expensive. There are quite a lot of cheap options in the SU already, and I think the importance in pricing in the SU shops and restaurants and cafe is actually providing like the workers with better pay, because at the end of the day the SU needs to make a profit and they need to have the money.
Yeah.
And currently the workers aren't getting paid a living wage, and for Sheffield as a city, which has 25% of the people as a whole on minimum wage, the SU needs to be setting an example for that and paying a living wage for that, which is like one of my policies of actually helping and supporting the workers.
I completely agree. I just don't think it's fair that we should be trying to make a profit off students who are obviously, we're all already paying such big tuition fees as it is, and we're in the library to study. I just don't think that having a coffee that costs almost £3 is very fair. I think if it was, a little bit cheaper, £1.50 or £2, say, then yeah, I completely agree that obviously earning a living wage is really important, but I just don't think that that's the way in which we should be going about getting that money by, I think that it would be really good if it was cheaper for students.
Thank you. So coming to you, Elmo, you have said that you want to propose a sleep laboratory. Where do you propose to get the space and the money for this? Would you already move the spa study spaces to put sleeping pods in?
If we can arrange the student union space more effectively, yes, I think we still have some spaces at the corners, every floor, because I have this kind of policy due to I observe the phenomenon in the libraries, also in student union. I sometimes stay there more than 3 or 5 days, and I sleep there. I also see some of the students sleep there because during the assignment period, they need to finish an assignment in 3 days, and they dare not to go home. So sometimes they just can sleep on the sofa. But I think if it's an emergency time, and if we can build the sleeping laboratory or sleeping capsules to let the students to take a nap inside, and it's a comfortable place to sleep like a capsule inside. But another issue is that I also concerned about the safety. So it must be very safe environment, and must be some CCTV and the guard, GUARD, the guards, and to stand around, because I think if somebody, just one person sleeping inside, is a little bit dangerous. And so I think, and also we have the regulation. Every student use their student card only can take 3 to 5 hours, and should let other students to have the opportunity to use the sleeping capsule as well. I just want to let the students feel more comfortable, because you can see in the library some students, they sleep on the ground or sleep on the chairs, and it's not good for their mental health and their well-being. But sometimes the staff in the library, they will wake you up. They say, hey, you cannot sleep here. It's not for you to sleep. If you want to sleep, you go home. But they don't know our schedule is that sometimes it's very urgent to submit one assignment. Yeah. So the students must stay in the library for 2 to 3 days, and they cannot go home to sleep.
Sorry, I'm just going to wrap it up here.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Megan, how will you ensure diversity in societies?
So again, working with all the representative committees to see what their needs are. I would like to make sure the students feel that they are welcome within societies, because some of the students I've spoken to, they feel too nervous to get involved. So for instance, one of the societies that I'm currently president for, that I've been on committee for 4 years, we were approached by Mature Students Committee, and they said, would you be happy to have mature students in your society? And we said, of course, we'd be happy to have mature students in our society. And then we heard nothing back, and they didn't put anyone towards us. And I'd want to help student societies and committees be able to talk to each other to make sure that diversity is there. So this is sort of societies and sort of in the SU more generally, BME committee and the previous student union officers did what I thought was a brilliant campaign about microaggressions, where they had student stories on posters and on those little sort of triangular cards on tables for all students to read. And everyone I've spoken to about that has said, oh yeah, I saw those were great, and it made them think about their behaviour to other people, and it also opened up that debate. I'd want to expand that to cover all different sorts of groups, so LGBT+, students suffering with mental health, men's mental health as well. We can't forget about the very, very high suicide rates in men, and mature students, anyone and everyone, people who are struggling with student finance, people who are struggling with their housing, and to have those stories around and those anonymous stories, because I think that would be a powerful thing, so that if you were struggling or maybe feeling alone, like you weren't included, you'd see a voice that represented you on your day-to-day walks about the student union. And I think that would also help students to feel less alone and more empowered to then go get involved in those activities.
Thank you so much. So Chris, Holly and Elmo, in a minute, how would you not only ensure diversity in societies but also support the needs of liberation groups? Holly, do you want to start with me?
Mm-hmm. Sorry, could you just repeat?
How would you also ensure diversity in societies and support liberation groups?
Mm-hmm. So as I mentioned about working with the inclusions officers, and as an inclusions officer myself, I would want to work with them, and I would want to attend the training that we have at the start of the year, by making sure that we're all really aware of how we can make every society as accessible as possible. For example, for disabled students who might, have different needs. And also I think that, like, with one of my big policies being about reducing racism and tackling homophobia, like, I think that would really help as well, making sure that we ensure that every society is not discriminating against those groups. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
you.
Chris?
Yeah, so a lot has been said already, which I kind of view myself as like the role as welfare officer encompasses all of what has been said. You know, every welfare officer, irrespective of manifesto, is going to be doing these roles and working with the committees and working to, raise awareness for discrimination, against discrimination and racism and homophobia and everything else. So from working with these committees and working to raise these issues, it comes with the role itself. So I think with that and his personal issues of being in the forefront of LGBT in life, it does mean a lot to me, and everyone on this stage right now cares for these inclusivity roles. So
What policies would you undertake to make sure that people are included, though?
I don't have any concrete policies regarding inclusivity in societies. But like I said, the role includes working with committees, and that is how I would approach it, and that is how I would have most attention with working with and collaborating with.
Thank you. Alma, same question to you.
Yes, I think I will. I pretty agree with Holly and what she said, and I will do the same things as her, and also the I forgot. I think. What's your question?
The question was, how would you support liberation groups and also include in diversity in societies?
Okay. So I think it's a very gradually process. So I think I also don't have the concrete policy about it. But for example, just like the coronavirus outbreaks, so I think then we can train the inclusion officers to be more aware about it. And because just like recently somebody got attacked because they wear the face mask, and these things we can also training a lot of committees to know about this, and to educate, just like collaborate with them, and also give them more information about these things, so they will be aware of it while they are conducting the activities in their societies. So they might in their society they will say, okay, it's okay to wear a mask to protect yourself, and because it's a cultural differences. Yeah, it's about a very sensitive thing. Yeah,
thank you. Megan, last question. How would you support liberation groups?
So again, working with those groups at a ground level, going to them, I would want to contact them to see what they would prefer me to get involved with them with. As much as I'd say, I would absolutely love to go to all of their meetings to see what they're up to, I know maybe some might not feel comfortable at first. Some might prefer that we arranged how exactly they wanted me to work with them over email first or over a telephone, or indeed they might just want me to come straight to the meetings, have a chat with them, and I would get in contact with every single one of them to see what they felt was the best way of me working with them and making sure that they were okay. I also want to implement a welfare survey which could be put out to all liberation groups but also all students, because I think sometimes we kind of assume what we think will be best for everybody, and that usually is never going to be the best for almost 28,000 people at the university. I'd want this survey to be something that was anonymous, something that was very obvious in its show, to say basically this is not an immediate help form, this is a what do you think we could help you and support you more with. So people could fill that out throughout the year. I could go through that, see if there are any big areas that we are missing out or forgetting about, and to make sure that I then get in contact with those areas, the liberation groups that represent those areas, and find the best way of supporting them and just working with them as a team.
Thank you so much. These have been your welfare officers, and on to the punditry.
Hello and welcome back. Hope you enjoyed the welfare debate. I'm here with Kira and Omanga. Hi guys.
Hello.
First of all, how did you find that debate? I found them a very strong team. What did you guys think?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of topics were covered: mental health, housing. I think we have a very strong group of candidates at hand for 2020.
Definitely.
Yeah.
A lot of important things touched on that. I think needs to be touched on.
Yeah, and I think probably starting off with mental health. Mental health was a massive discussion in that debate. So what did you guys think? So I know Chris touched on waiting times for mental health help, and there was discussion about a 24-hour helpline in Holly's campaign. What did you guys think?
Yeah, so currently we do have a mental health timeline, nightline, which runs from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And if I'm saying this right, I think Samaritans have a 24/7 line as well. So there's already resources available. I think maybe developing what we already have would be more prudent than to start something from scratch, because there's already resources in place. So I think working with Nightline and just sort of extending those services would be really good.
Definitely. I completely agree. Like, Nightline's such a valuable thing we already have. So putting money in rather than starting a whole new service makes a lot more sense. And Chris also said a really valuable thing about having more specialists come in. We were saying earlier, like, SAMS is such a valued service and it's underfunded. Having more specialists come in would be really good. And then Elmo also brought in a really good part about having like different languages for mental health. Like international students have an opportunity to speak in their own language, to communicate how they feel. I suppose it'd be really isolating, like not being able to communicate how you feel, you know, in a second language. So I really like that.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Speaking as an international student myself, SAMS hasn't been quite helpful because there aren't counselors that know of the culture that I come from, or that many other students come from as well. But the thing with SAMS is they're very underfunded. Where is this money going to come from? So just having a simple mental health matters fund isn't enough. We need to know how this money is being spent. And think of how much it'll cost to hire someone who speaks 2 languages with a degree to work in university counseling as well. So there's a lot of money going into that. But where's that money going to come from? Having one fund wouldn't be enough.
Yeah, that's very true, isn't it? Did they touch on that, where they were going to get the money from to provide for these mental health?
Someone definitely mentioned having like our tuition fees. I think it was Elmo who said the money that's going into the university should be taken back out for our welfare, which I think is completely valid, since like we should have our mental health completely supported the whole way through our university journey.
And university fees are a crazy amount of money. So
Speaking as an international student.
Oh my gosh, yeah, of course. So I think moving on next to housing, they kind of touched on housing. I can't remember who said it, but they were saying that mature students are really outcast by the uni. Who was that said that?
Yeah, I think that was Megan. She mentioned the point about mature students, and I completely agree, because they aren't really represented in student politics much. I believe that there should be also like a mature students officer maybe in the future, since there's already an international students officer. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think so. Another thing that I think is sort of reiterated, but maybe it doesn't need to be as much, is Holly said about having like housing tips. So this comes with like bills and house hunting, but I feel like we already have a housing service.
Yeah.
So maybe add it more, maybe get it out there more. We need to advertise it a bit more, but I think a lot of that's already been reiterated. Already. So maybe like this talking a lot about things we have.
I think quite a few of those candidates were quite involved already with welfare at the uni, which was quite promising. What did you guys think about that?
Yeah, love the experience. The more experience you have, the more you know how to tackle such complex issues as welfare, because there are different types of welfare. There are disabled students, there are poor students, there are mature students, and students with children. So in order to like sort of help them on their own individual journey, it's important to have that experience, so you know how to work with different types of people.
Yeah, completely. I think Holly has an amazing set that's on her manifesto. She's been a global campus ambassador, inclusions officer for Ice Skating Society, a Sheffield mentor, and a mental health officer on the welfare committee, just to begin with. And Megan's also got like a collection of accolades herself. I think that is vital to bring that knowledge in. So she's not starting at a basic level. There's very much like a starting point that she's brought way up in her years of being at Sheffield.
Yeah, it's really good. Well, thank you very much, guys, for joining us. And I think we had some really strong candidates, so I really look forward to seeing who prevails after that. So I think we're throwing it back to Sama in the studio for the education debate.
Hello and welcome back. I'm here with your 2 education candidate officers. We have Misha here, and we also have Sam here. How are you guys doing?
Not too bad.
Doing good. We love to hear that. Okay, so first question. How would you represent and support minority ethnic groups, low participation groups, care leavers, people with disabilities, and those that are in their first generation to come to university?
Okay. I fit into a lot of those groups, so I feel like it would be something that would be pretty difficult because there isn't a lot of support right now in place, especially for mature students. I feel like they kind of just get left out a lot. So I would definitely start implementing policies that are more governed towards people with mental health, mature students, people of ethnicities. They come from so many diverse backgrounds, there's so much support that they actually need. A lot of things could be done to support them, and I'd like to be able to start policies to do that.
Thank you. Sam?
I think definitely working with all of those groups as soon as they come to university is really important, because a lot of work is done to get those people through the door, you know, for stats and things like that. So I want to make sure, like, as a first generation student myself, that everyone takes the most opportunities given to them as possible, like getting involved in societies, making sure that societies are being as inclusive as possible as well, and then people making sure that they can go up to societies and think like, are these ones for me? Like, I don't want them to feel nervous. So yeah, I think just people reaching out, like, definitely.
Sam, you said that you want to ensure that every department has their own member of staff dedicated to welfare and emotion and educational progress. There are over 50 departments. How would you work with departments to introduce it, and how would you fund it?
I think it works really well when departments do have welfare staff. So my department, sociology, has just got a new welfare officer, and she's really made an impact already. So I want collaboration across all departments to make sure, even if there's just a member of staff that is welfare trained, I want everyone to know that from day one that they enter university, like, this is the member of staff you go to. Because I've spoken to quite a few people on the concourse that say in their department they wouldn't actually know where to go if they had an issue. So, I mean, as well as the support that we have in the SU is really good, it's on level 6, so I found it hard to access myself. So
how would you fund it though with over 50 departments? I understand some already do have it, but for those that don't,
I think in the past, like, departments have had cuts, and I think it's time that the university started investing more in departments, because at the end of the day, like, the departments are where most people spend their time at university. It's the core of what we are. So I think just making sure that they're taking it seriously.
Thank you. Misha, you said that you want to review class sizes and teaching qualities. How would you review teaching quality across the university? And if you were to make class sizes smaller, how would that work logistically? Timetables and spaces, etc.
Right. So when I was speaking of that, my main thing that I've been hearing from other fellow students is just the fact that some classes are so big. I understand why they're big. Obviously, there is a lot of us here, but that then minimizes the amount of time you can have with your tutor, the amount of accessibility there is to your tutor. Your tutor cannot, one of them, to 60, 70, 80, maybe more of us, especially when we're in lecture halls and theaters. Afterwards, they say things like, oh, if you've got a question, come to the front and ask. And there's a bombard of students. Yes, there is emails and things like that, but that could take days to get back. If it's a little question, it's something that wants to be answered then and there. I feel like there should be more accessibility for that, and not a less of it because there's more students that attend. Yeah.
But how would that affect? So timetables, class, like, where would you
implement that into?
Yes.
Right, so in that situation, I feel like the best thing to probably do would be have more than one teacher, or somebody that also knows the background knowledge of the subject. So, oh, well, if I'm busy, don't worry, because this person does have my notes or understands what lectures are going on at the time.
Thank you. So a lot of candidates in other roles want to bring microwaves, but this doesn't really work with the lack of study spaces. As an education officer candidate, how would you work to maximise study space whilst also supporting your fellow officers' manifestos ideas?
Sorry, what was the start of that question? I think.
So a lot of candidates want to introduce microwaves into study spaces, and study space is already sparse. So how would you, as an education officer, potentially support study spaces while also supporting your potential officers, your office's manifesto ideas?
I think obviously study space is really crucial in university. Like, we have nearly 30,000 students, so it's really important. But I think just having a little cupboard where there's a hot water tap or a microwave wouldn't take up that much space at all. Just putting it in spaces where computers wouldn't be. Obviously, I think there is space for that if we really look and assess the study spaces as they are, even just in the SU. I mean, we have the hot water tap in the shop at the moment, so that doesn't take up a lot of space, and even the management school at the moment, they have the cafe, which is also used as a study space, so I think there is room for it, for sure.
Misha, what's your take on this?
I totally agree with everything that Sam said. I think also this touches on the welfare, what the welfare officers stated. It is extremely important for us to be able to have places to eat, to drink, facilities available to us, because while you're studying, you're going to get hungry. There was another issue brought up with the amount of money that you have to spend to be able to eat or to have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. If you're bringing your own food, then you're trying to like bypass that problem. There should be a facility for you. I feel like Sam is absolutely correct. There is space available. It should be used and utilized in the correct way to help us.
So none of you have mentioned tackling tuition fees or hidden costs of education in your manifestos. This has been a highly debated topic in previous years. Why have you both chosen it to leave it off your manifesto?
Because I honestly feel like for a one-year position, there's only so much I can push. I would love to say to everybody, I'm going to scrap tuition fees, education's going to be free, and everything's going to go great. I cannot offer that to you. That is more of a governmental level of things that would need to change. But as your educational officer, I can stand and say that I do support you. I want better policies in place for when strike actions do occur so that students are supported and we're not just left wondering what's going to happen. Mental health is at stake, grades are at stake, and unfortunately a lot of money is at stake because we pay so much money to be here, so it's extremely important.
Sam, what's your take on this?
I definitely agree. I think it's about the long-term goals and the short-term goals and just continuing the work that the previous education officers have done. So it's a really important thing to think about, but it's not one of my main manifestos just because I think just listening to student feedback, making sure it gets taken seriously in all modules and all departments is something that I can really tackle straight away.
So in reference to the strikes, do you believe both that there's an issue of communication between lecturers and students?
Absolutely, and I feel like there should be definitely a bridge put between that. I feel like as a university, support should be put in place for students and there'd be less of a problem with the fact that your tutor is not there. If there was a policy where someone else was going to take over the class, your material was available to you or anything like that, I don't feel like students would be so upset. I feel like they'd be more supportive because we are extremely open-minded and we all do want equality and equal pay for everybody, but not at the detriment of our education.
Sam, what's your stance on that?
Yeah, so obviously, like, we all completely support the strikes, but as education officer, we are first and foremost for the students. So I think communication is really key, especially on a departmental level. We've been really lucky to have all the facts and questions, so like on the triangles, on the tables and everything. All the emails have been brilliant, but on a departmental level, if you're being assessed by exams, if you're being assessed by essays, we need to know exactly how that's going to affect it, if we're going to get extensions or not, and if we are, then that's fine, we'll still support it. But in the meantime, while there is strikes, we need to know like what we can do in the meantime.
So if staff strike again during your term, if you are elected as education officer, what would be your stance on it? And also, do you have any policies for supporting students during that time?
My stance on strikes, I absolutely support it. I feel like everybody should have equal rights, opportunities, and the freedom of speech. I feel like that's extremely important, but not at a detriment to us. So the policies that I would put into place would tackle mental health because it's extremely stressful at that time, as well as unforeseen circumstances and things like that. For your extenuating circumstances, it's not always a route you want to take, and it's not because of the stigma, but you just don't want to end up with a lot of work at the end of it, and that still affects you as a student. So I feel like the policies that should be put into place is for classes to continue. Everything should go as normal around the fact that there is a strike that is on place.
I don't think everything should go on as normal per se, because obviously the point of the strikes is that it does disrupt. So I think students should definitely make sure that they say that they're unhappy with this, and that money given to departments, I know that they've all been given a fund, should go to mental health and the welfare officer that my policy supports.
Thank you. So what do you both think that is the big issues currently in education today in the university, and what are your best policies for tackling this? Sam?
So I think the biggest issue is just listening to student feedback at the moment. So with the strikes at the end of last semester, my module evaluations for a couple of the modules just weren't filled out or anything, so I couldn't actually tell my lecturer without not being anonymised how I felt about how that went. And then student staff committee meetings, I need that to relate to the staff meetings that they have as well, so that every single student voice is heard. So I think that's the most important thing.
Right, so mine would be equality and support. I feel like the feedback is extremely important, but I also feel like a lot of students are not partaking. A lot of different reasons. Certain parts on the feedback ask for an age. As a mature student, if I was to put my age, you would be able to tell within a small class that it was me that did it. Also on the fact that if there's not a minority group and you put what you are, you're going to be singled out. It's going to be noticeable who said what. Feedback is extremely important so that we can change what is going on. I feel like the student voice should definitely be heard, but I also feel like there's a lot of groups that are being overlooked and their educational needs are not being met.
Thank you. So within 6 months of if you are elected, so within 6 months of that, what would you wish to do that would completely change the education system within the first 6 months?
I think just speaking to every single department individually and making sure that they communicate with each other better, because speaking to a lot of children who want to come to this university working with widening participation, they ask me how it's going to be like in university, and I say, well, it just depends what department you're with and what their policies are. So I think just open communication, like some subjects do feedback and marking better than others, so I think just tackling that in the first 6 months would be really great.
Thank you.
I think that's absolutely great. I'd also like to add that I would like to try and fight for a material grant for all students that need it. Yeah, we pay a lot to be here, but there's other things that are needed for your education to be furthered. Books that you were referred to during your lecture studies and such not. Stationery that's needed for projects. That is not included in your tuition. It's something that you have to pay for separately. And depending on what department you're on, depends on what you're going to need to be able to be successful. I feel like some students are able to do that themselves and others are not, but we shouldn't be at a disadvantage. There should be equality throughout.
Where would the money for the material grant come from?
I feel like that's something that we could do within the university, or if not, I feel like campaigning as students, we would be able to raise money or to have sponsorships for such things to occur, because people will understand how important it is for our education.
Thank you. Some students have voiced concerns that they think that there's not enough study spaces within the university. What would be your response to that?
I would completely agree. I mean, there's a lot of us here. I think just making sure that we have a list or a map of all the study spaces available, not just making them more available in exam season, making them available all the way through the year, because I think people definitely need that. So buildings like the Pam Liversage building, I only just discovered in my second year, so that was quite close to city accommodation. So just making that more available.
Yes, absolutely agree. I also feel like there are a lot of spaces that are available, we just don't know about them. There's also a lot of off-campus sites that we don't know about. A recent one I found out, Northern General Hospital actually has a building with computers and Wi-Fi that you can be on because you're part of the University of Sheffield. I feel like nobody really knew about that. It was discovered by accident by a fellow classmate who passed it on to me. But why are we not being told about all the spaces that are available, and especially when everybody knows how much we complain about it?
Of course. So when students first start into university in their first year, sometimes there's not enough adequate information to let them know about services like DDSS and SAMS. So how would you tackle that issue?
I think within Sociology Society, we try and tackle that issue. So we do a separate Q&A session for all of the first years so that they can ask anything and we can provide them that sort of information. But I think it should be another departmental. So you have your intro talks at the start of the year. So I think having those services come in and show them exactly what you can gain from them, even just with extenuating circumstances. I didn't know how hard or easy it was to get until I needed it. So I think just laying that all out at the start of the year, just in case, if they have it written on their wall, something like that.
Yeah, I feel like we have a lot of students here. A lot of us can help each other. I feel like we can definitely govern each other. I would like to create a forum for different departments, and any type of problem that occurs for the forum to be of access to every student, and then you can be signposted and directed. I feel like sometimes it's hard to even find out where to start when you don't know what's available to you. So it would just be that one person that's a point of access for you that could deliver you to wherever you needed to go as soon as possible, really, so that you could get on with what you're here to do, which is to study.
When newcomers come to the university, so first years, new postgraduates, new PhDs, how would you support them? And do you have any policies to making sure that their transition from their prior education to University of Sheffield is smoother?
Yeah, I feel like that's definitely a group of people that definitely need targeting. I've been here for a very long time, and it wasn't until I started this election that I realized where half the things were. I came in as a mature student, so it wasn't a situation where there was other students like me to help me through the process. I would definitely come up with access points for all these type of events that were to happen, different places that are available, and I feel like they should all be posted, websites, Facebook, things like that, where socially we all pretty much gather.
Sam?
Yeah, I completely agree. Just go into their student accommodations as well, informing residents' life mentors, and making more use of the University of Sheffield app. I think that'd be a really good way of just signposting people to that and have its own page.
When students come to you with their problems, how would you communicate them to solve this? Would it be one-to-one? Would it be email, or any other ideas that you may have?
I think I'm definitely going to make my email accessible to everyone, and then they can come into one-to-one chats. I'll do drop-in sessions weekly for sure, which we do with Sociology Society anyway, just to know that I'm a friendly face and that they can recognise me in the Students' Union, and make it known that I'm here for any, welfare educational issues, and I can communicate on their behalf.
Yeah, definitely. I'd rather do face-to-face. I feel like it's very important to know who's fighting for you. I feel like it's very important to get things right. Through email, you can't feel the talk, the tone of the conversation. I want to be able to sit there and look students in the eye and tell them that it's going to be okay, and they've got someone in their corner fighting for them.
What makes you the best candidate to be the education officer? How do you stand out?
I think I stand out because I'm just fighting for every single student voice who feels like they haven't been heard in their department, they haven't been heard in their university, and I want to make sure you are.
I stand for all students, minority students, international students, mature students. I'm also a mother. I feel like university should be a lot more inclusive than what I have experienced, and I'd love to be the person to bring it all together.
What is your best policy that would be the most persuasive for people to vote for you?
I think just feedback on modules, on the university, on the Students' Union. I think there needs to be more ways that you can do it as well. So if you miss that last lecture and you don't get to fill in the module feedback form, then there needs to be someone else that you can contact.
Well, my motto is our time, our money, and it's our education. If we're going to put so much into it, this establishment would not exist without us. If we stopped coming, if we stopped giving money, there would be no university. I feel like it's very important that we can all just stand together and go forward as a unity with everybody of the election, because we all need to work together to make it work.
Thank you. Education officers support distressed students. In your opinion, what is the definition of a distressed student, and who would be prioritised first, and how would you handle that?
I think just anyone who feels uncertain in their university, in their experience, I would try and prioritise everyone for sure, but anyone with mental health issues, they need help straight away, so making sure that they're put to the right services.
I don't feel like you can prioritize a distressed student. Everybody has a distress, and to them it is a big distress. It might be something absolutely little that someone else could handle, but to them they can't. I feel like there should be someone for everyone to go to, and that's what I would like to make possible for everyone.
Thank you. These have been your election of education officers. I'm going to throw it back to the studio and hand you guys to Will.
Hi, and welcome. I am Will Kirkpatrick. We've had a bit of change of scenery here in the Pundit studio. I'm joined here with Kira and Amunga. Hi.
Hello.
How did you find that debate just then?
It was really interesting. It was great to see the two candidates just go back and forth, and the flow was great. 5 stars.
Yeah, I think it was interesting. It's a shame that we couldn't have one of the candidates make it, because I think they had a really strong manifesto to begin with. But I was really impressed with what I saw just then. There's a lot to talk about. Yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, it should be made clear that there was meant to be 3 people on stage there, but Ellie Linas was not able to attend. But we're just going to jump straight into it. So first of all, there was a lot of talk about lecture quality. That was through Misha with the class sizes, and also with Sam with the welfare department staff. How realistic do you think these manifesto points are?
In terms of Misha's point on class sizes, I don't really see how a Students' Union officer can impact class sizes in the university, because the Students' Union is completely separate from the university. So I don't really understand how she'd facilitate this, and let alone, because like funding is another big issue.
I think with Misha's thing about the class sizes, I think if you want to thin out, if you want to have more classes with more teachers, then we have to question quality again, because we're having teachers that perhaps aren't taught the same knowledge as main lecturers. Then she's already said she wants to assess quality of teachers. I think we could be perhaps making that situation worse if we're not having as trained up teachers. But I completely agree with Sam's point on welfare people in every department. Everyone's assigned tutors at random. I think they should all be trained to a good quality when it comes to welfare, because obviously when it comes to stressful times like exams and
mental
deadlines.
Health does not discriminate, unfortunately. So it's crucial that every department has a welfare officer.
Exactly.
Mental health is obviously very crucial, but do you not find it a bit odd how in her debate she mentions how this will be paid for and mentions cuts? Like, do you applaud her for like that realism there, or do you think that's a little misguided?
I think it's a little misguided. You don't really know where these cuts are coming from. You'll have to have this won't happen in a year. Let's be realistic here. And it's just it's just words coming out of her mouth at this point. Sorry.
I do think it's good to be realistic, because I think with a lot of these manifesto campaigns we've seen year after year, it's hard to get, like microwaves we know are so hard to get into the Students' Union and different libraries and cafes. So I think that is a bit of a stretch. So I'm glad when it comes to a bit of a realistic point of view of, but, obviously if you're not in the position to talk about cuts, then perhaps it's best to sort of like keep that at bay.
We did touch on study spaces in the debate, and that perceived microwave debate kind of runs into this. Definitely. Because you'd think it impacts the way that the education is taught. How do you feel like these candidates would combat that?
I think raising awareness of the study spaces available is a very good point that Misha raised. She talked about how the Northern General Hospital wasn't something that many students knew about.
That was crazy.
And me and Kira were dumbfounded.
Yeah, not a clue. Yeah. I just think I think this position, you don't really need to be doing a lot to just mention this is where the study spaces are. I think this should already be readily available, and I think it is, to be fair. I've never really had an issue with finding a study space, so I don't know if that's being harped on about maybe a bit too much. What I think could be a bit of a stretch is the idea of getting again microwaves and whatnot. But I did like Misha's point on getting materials, accessories for pencils, pens, resources that are needed. I think that should definitely be provided and not have to come out of more students' pockets.
And now the strikes. It was it was always going to come up, wasn't it? We've tried avoiding it for as long as possible, but obviously it is a big part of education and a big part of their manifestos. They talked a lot about the communication between the strikes. What do you feel about that?
So the communication between the lecturers and the students, the reason for the strikes are disruptions. They're disruptive. That's how they want to get the result that they need for increase in pay, for fairer pension, fairer work hours, for part-time post PhD students. Sorry, jumbled up my words there. But communication is incredibly important, because at the end of the day, it is the students that are getting disrupted. It's their mental health that's getting affected. It's their academic careers that are being put at stake. But the SU has been in support of the strikes, and the lecturers have been hosting teach-out sessions in the SU. So I'm guessing that if strikes were to happen in the future, we'd see an extension of that.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant point she made. I think I've been personally really well informed about strikes. I've had really supportive lecturers who have talked us through it. I completely agree that Sam's made a really valid point where, like, there is meant to be disruption with these sort of things. It's how we make a point. So I don't think classes should continue for the sake of strike solidarity.
Have you found that, since we've had 2 different sets of strikes, have you found that the second strike has been better than the first one in terms of communication? And if so, how will we even better that in the future?
I think it's been, because it's happened so close into when the term started, I think I found it kind of scary, because I don't know, am I ahead of my schedule? Am I behind? I have struggled a bit more. At least like the first strike, it happened quite later on in the semester, so we were like taught well in advance what's going to happen. It talked us through, so I think it was a bit more of a rush job this time. But I'm still like fully like supportive of the strikes, and I'm making my way through it fine enough.
Yeah, as a master's student, it's quite disruptive, since a lot of my contact hours have been reduced. But again, it's meant as a disruption, and I completely understand why the strikes are taking place. However, I think I think it was a point raised by Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, that there should be more transparency in regards to extenuating circumstances, to assessments, to essays, to, let's say, practical assessments as well.
I think that's perfect.
Yeah, that's
isn't
perfect.
It?
Yeah,
everyone's been accommodated for at that point. Like we can stand in support of the strikes and also feel like our needs are being met as well as the students.
And we touched on a bit in that debate about the student support that we'd get, not just through the strikes, but throughout the whole time here at Sheffield. How do you feel that they portrayed their beliefs in the debate?
I think there's a lot of emphasis on department focus. So again, like the welfare. So again, we'll be sort of have our hands held the whole way through if needed, which I think was really important. And also, I think there was a lot of talk of like departments being a lot more open with each other. Like Sam could really just speak about like sociology, but it was harder to get a gist of like other departments. And I think that raises a valid point that perhaps we should have departments communicate a bit more. I'm a dual honours myself, so I think it would be nice to have more communication and just that extra support. So I'm feeling like it's all equally weighing out well.
Yeah, definitely, to have welfare tailored to your course and tailored to the content that you're producing to get your degree is very important, and it's a very valid point that's been raised.
I think it is quite easy for us to, because we have quite a narrow viewpoint, because we see that from the perspective of our own departments, and someone in the education position would have to see that from across the way. But like you said, they were very vocal on sociology in general.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that could be a problem coming through?
I suppose you can only really use the experiences that you have, I guess. Perhaps it was mentioned a bit too much, but I don't know. I suppose you have to play to your strengths. So that was her experience. Misha's a mature student, and she, capitalised on that, which is, it's brilliant. It's how you sort of reach out to people. It's these experiences.
And she also tried to translate her experience into what she'd do as an education officer. She mentioned that she does weekly drop-in sessions in her sociology society. So translating that into her position as a potential educational officer, I think that was smart.
Yeah.
Do you think there were any missed opportunities here in this debate? Because obviously education is a massive part of our student lives. Do you feel like there's anything that they could have hit more? Or?
I genuinely feel that they should have focused on international students as well, because that wasn't mentioned at all, I think, because international students, they face culture shock when it comes to the curriculum itself. I've studied in an Indian curriculum in high school. It was CBSE, and we had to do a lot of route learning for that. So preparing myself for doing critical essays and doing filming for my journalism undergrad, it was difficult at first, and it took me the whole of first year to adjust. So sort of having that ease into a different curriculum, that would have been quite helpful to know about.
Yeah. Great. So that is all for education, but it's the big one now. It's the President's debate. We'll be throwing over to Sama now at the debate stage.
Hello and welcome. I'm now joined with your potential SU President officers. Here we have Josh, we have Beth, and we have Dom here. So first, let's get this started. Your manifestos in some way all touch on sustainability. What are the current issues and how would you propose and implement a solution? Josh?
So sustainability is a massive, massive point when we're talking about our climate responsibility. When looking at sustainability, we look at financial sustainability, we look at sustainability when it comes to the climate, and we look at sustainability when it comes to running the SU. Mine specifically touches on climate responsibility and that side of sustainability. So in that sense, we've got to lobby the university in this hypocrisy that's going on where they are giving all this climate talk, yet are not acting on their words. So the climate lectures which were due to happen, not coming to fruition. What's happening there? We've got to hold them to account to that. When they're talking about these different climate issues, yet are building a power station behind the Dainton building. These things need to be brought to the attention of the university, and we need to act on that now.
Yeah, I completely reiterate that there's a massive climate crisis right now. Sustainability needs to be at the forefront of any leadership that's in this election. I think one of the issues that students are facing right now is that they're getting a lot of leaflets, and I'm committed to doing a leafletless campaign for this reason. And as well, just like putting at the forefront, making sure we hold the Vice-Chancellor to account on any empty promises that he might be making.
Dom?
Thank you. What you said about sustainability is paramount importance. So in my manifesto, I talk about ensuring we have environmentally and ethically sustainable new business partners. And so what this means in practice is that when the university is doing business, we put pressure on the university to ensure that they're doing it with ethically and environmentally responsible companies. And so we take a more proactive approach to how we go about tackling sustainability. I think that's the key to it. On the topic of leaflets, I do appreciate what you're saying, but at the same time, I think it's also crucially important that we engage as many people as possible in the democratic process, and I think a big part of that is leaflets. And I think relative to the bigger problems that we're facing, the impact of leaflets on the climate is somewhat negligible. And so, I mean, even the Green Party, for example, are very heavily dependent on paper advertising, and I don't think anyone here would sort of say we're greener than the Greens. So I appreciate what you're saying about leaflets, but I think they still have a role in our democracy. I still think they're important to engage students.
Completely get that, but I do also think that we can engage students in other ways other than leaflets. Like, they're annoying, they're unnecessary, and it's the small changes that are going to make the biggest impact.
Yeah. With the whole leaflet thing, Beth, I think what you've gone beyond the mark there. It is it's our perception, and we are the best students' union in the country for 11 years now. We're leading the way on the policies that we make here in Sheffield. So by setting that example, that reiterates to the rest of the country as well. So definitely.
We have just been joined by Fleur, who is also another candidate for being the presidential officer. I'm going to run the first question to you as well. Your manifesto touches on sustainability. What are the current issues that you face, that the university faces on this, and how would you propose and implement a solution?
So I think one of the biggest problems is food waste, and
one-use plastic. So in particular, one of my key policies is to install microwaves and hot water taps in all of the libraries. I did some research last week and popped down to Hallam University. They've recently implemented this change, and I was quite reassured and sort of propelled forward by the fact there were quite large queues for all of those facilities.
Thank you. So going to Dom, you have said in your manifesto that you want to create a postgrad and mature student officer. How would this benefit postgrads and mature students? Would it be enough to justify the £19,000?
Okay, so I think the first thing we need to look at when we're talking about this is just how big the mature and postgrad population is. So at Sheffield we have 29,700 students approximately. Of those, roughly 11,000 are mature and postgrad, so this is 37% of our student body. They currently have no officer representation. I think this is a massive disservice to the community. And there are a lot of challenges faced by mature students, such as childcare, transport. These are far more common amongst mature students, and we need to be doing everything we can to support them. At the moment, their portfolio is split amongst education, welfare, women's, and I think it does warrant their own position. And with us with the change to the NUS structure that's coming up this year, that was spoken about last year, but it's being implemented this year, we'll have roughly an extra £19,500, which rather coincidentally is more or less what we pay our officers. So I think we have the means to pay for it, and I think it's essential, really.
The education officer is meant to be working with mature students, so do you feel like they don't do enough?
I mean, I don't want to speak on behalf of mature students, but when I've spoken to mature students, I feel like there's an awful lot of work that can be done for them. For example, with the Freshers' Fair, a lot of mature students feel out of place at the Freshers' Fair because they feel a lot older and they don't know if it's really for them. And so one easy thing we can do is have an online Freshers' Fair in addition. And so that's not just good for mature students, it's also good for people who maybe don't like being in big crowds, feel uncomfortable in big crowds. So it's all about increasing accessibility within our democracy. And this is what a mature and postgrad officer does.
What is your take on this, guys?
You go first.
So you want to create a postgrad and mature students officer. What do you think is more important? That sort of type of officer, or a BME officer, for example? But my main question for you is, yes, the NUS changes does bring in £19,500, but the Students' Union is running on deficit. So which do you think is more appropriate at this time in terms of the sustainability of the Students' Union? Do you think it is to bring in another officer, or do you think it is to ensure the SU is still here in years to come?
Okay, so if we can talk about the finances of the SU. The SU has a revenue of £11.6 million a year. 3.5 million of this comes from the university. However, the university was last year ran a surplus of £19 million. So I think it's time we reassess our relationship with the university and they start contributing a bit more, because they like to advertise that we have the best student union in the country. It won't be that way if they're not supporting us and giving us the support that we need. And also Jake is having his winter festival, his music festival. This is projected to create quite a healthy profit. Again, this is another source of revenue that we can use for all these brilliant things, such as mature and postgrad representation.
Thank you. The president is the forefront figurehead of the SU. What makes you think that you have the leadership skills to bring the SU forward? Beth.
Yeah, hello. I've got so much experience in the SU, so I've been part of student politics since my first year. I am a co-founder of Craft Club Society, shout out to them. I like to think that I'm really inclusive, I'm a passionate figurehead, and also I'm really determined to bring forward the issues of those who often don't have their voices heard, such as care experienced students, with my policy on the travel.
What is your policy on travel?
So my policy is I'm creating a meet and greet service for domestic students. So this could be just for anyone who needs it and struggles to get to university.
So on your policy of travel, it says that it's also for domestic students from the UK, right?
Yeah.
A benefit for international students is that they normally come from one place, which is Manchester Airport.
Yeah.
Domestic students are from all over the UK. Where would your hubs be? What form of transport would it be? And how much money would this cost? And what about staffing?
A lot of questions there. So the basis of it would be really similar to the meet and greet service. I think they have a great system set up. I worked on it myself this summer, and the organisation, a lot of it student-led as well, was amazing. I don't see why it isn't in question that we should expand this further. Over half of care experience students drop out of university, well, consider dropping out of university, and these issues are never even brought up. I've never heard this being discussed before. Like, we should be making these extra steps. Regarding cities and costs and things, these are like logistics that can be decided on the job when this thing kind of like gets into fruition. I can't give you a figure. I can't give you how staff's going to work, but this is something that I could work on if I got the job.
Thank you. So going back to why you would be the best figurehead of the SU and what makes you have the leadership skills, Josh?
So I have a wealth of experience. In my first year, I was chair of the Students Union Council. I got involved in the Constitutional Committee through that. I was on the University Senate, and I was elected the SU councillor for my department. So in terms of getting things done quickly, in my first year, I got all that done, and I'd like to think I did a pretty good job. So in doing that, chairing meetings, meeting with the Vice-Chancellor in the Senate meetings, being around in them rooms to talk about student concerns is something that I'm very experienced with. I spent 4 weeks with the Vice-Chancellor at the University of Bolton. I've got a wealth of experience.
Fleur, what about you?
So I'm on committee for windsurfing, but I'd say my key skill is that I'm very approachable. So while I've been at Sheffield, I've become involved in pretty much everything that the SU has to offer. So I've done the charity hitchhike, skydive, I've been a member of the big band, I'm currently a member of other sports societies as well. And I think that that's really given me a fantastic skill set for engaging with students of all different types from all different types of backgrounds, and I have a really good understanding of how the SU works and how it all fits together. Would it be possible for me to ask Beth a question on one of her policies?
Of course. Do you mind if I just go to Dom about this question and then? So Dom, what about why do you think you have the leadership skills to bring the SU forward as president?
So, I'm incredibly passionate about the Students' Union. I currently serve as the Vice Chair of the Student Union Council. I'm a third-year medical student. I come from the medical school. So I have a really big interest in mental health is a big part of it. But if you look at what I've done on the Students' Union Council, I have a track record of taking on big issues and having big results. So, for example, if we look at what happened with the Hong Kong policy, there were students in our city from Hong Kong who were being attacked because they had a stand supporting democracy. I think this is really quite concerning. And so myself and others put forward a policy supporting democracy in Hong Kong. And councillors who didn't agree with me at the time, for example, the disabled rep Yang Shi, he spoke quite vocally against this policy. But now he's endorsing me for the campaign because he sees that I can get people from all sides on board, and so.
Would I be able to put in here? Yeah. So you actually quoted by Ford saying that Jake Verity needed to get his subordinates in order about Cissy Lee, and if anything, I think this is indicative maybe of how your leadership would be, if you would like to respond.
So I don't really want to make this a part of the campaign, but seeing as you brought it up, I think what I did is I stood up very vocally for the rights of minorities to freedom of expression on campus. I think this is essential, and I think you're seeking to undermine what I've done on that.
No, I'm sorry.
But if I can comment on what you said regarding Cissy Lee.
No, I want you to comment on subordinates.
Sorry, can I just cut this conversation here? Thank you so much. Flo, what was your question for Beth?
Oh,
sorry.
No worries.
Oh my goodness, I feel like I interrupted someone quite intense over there. I was just going to... actually, can I ask Dom a question instead?
Yeah.
I've got too many questions.
Go for it.
Dom, so your policies on mental health, I do like some of your ideas.
Thank you.
You're welcome. However, I would like to highlight that I think that maybe you're not coming at the problem from enough angles. So your focus is very much on the mental health support system we have, which is brilliant, but definitely overcapacitated at current. But also, I would say that, and also your idea for the committee, brilliant. But why are you not focusing more on looking at solving the loneliness crisis and increasing societal participation as a primary aim of yours?
I think that's good stuff. And if I can reply, with regards to sort of coming at it from enough angles, the whole point of the Mental Health Committee is to come at it from every single angle we can. So on this committee, you would have various representatives from different groups within the Students' Union and our campus. You would also have representation from organisations such as Mental Health Matters, from Nightline, from the University Counselling Service, the University Health Service. The point is we get all of these people together that are so active for mental health on our campus, and together we come up with an overriding framework and how everyone can play their role in solving, or well, at least helping to combat this mental health crisis that we have on campus. And I think you're right about loneliness being a factor. So I'm happy to hear any suggestions you have to deal with that. So thank you.
Josh?
Yeah, just to add to that, so my manifesto point on mental health directly tackles loneliness for international students, for example. International students come from 8,000 miles away to the city of Sheffield, and they're homesick. Where do they go? If they have, if English isn't their native language and there's a lot of technical language, how do we approach that? We need to look at all these issues and go, we are here for you. We understand what you're going through because we have heard of your experiences before. With postgraduate students, isolation in a box that they call an office for 4 years. We need to really reach out to these people and go, this service is available for you. But like you said before, this service is not good enough in its current state at the moment. So we need to look at that service and go, where are we going wrong? We need to look at the efficiency, we need to look at the effectiveness of it, we need to look at the 6-week waiting times, and we need to look at the fact that if you're not suicidal, they turn you away. So there we go.
If I could comment, ask Beth something quickly. Mental health doesn't seem to feature too much in your manifesto. Is this still a priority for you? Or?
Of course, mental health is a priority for me. I think it's such a prevalent issue in so many students' lives, including my own. My approach to mental health is more implicit, but I would like to think that I'm making actual physical solutions to a lot of the problems students are facing. We need more funding, that's the main issue, and we can't provide that. We need to lobby for it.
If you all care about mental health so much, why aren't you running for welfare officer?
I mean, this question was asked last year as well to Emily, who decided to put welfare at the forefront of her campaign. I think presidents take on a leadership role. Things like sustainability, things like welfare should be at the forefront of the SU, and that's okay. And it's okay for a president to have that as one of their priorities.
Thank you. Fleur?
Oh, could I ask Beth that question while she's on her own? In your manifesto, you talk about teaching students the skills they need for life, which I agree is a very important area. The example that you quote on your Facebook page is that you're going to teach them how to take out ISAs, for example, as one of the things. However, I'd like to point out that you can no longer take an ISA out as of the 30th of November last year.
Sorry, I think you may have misunderstood the manifesto. So I used the Help to Buy ISA as an example of where I found that I didn't have the adequate financial education, and it was only when I was talking to my friends that I kind of was able to open an ISA. And then we need to have this kind of throughout the year so everyone is on the same level playing field.
Sorry, it looked like that was the example you were giving.
Fleur, can I ask you a question, please? You say that you want to have a 15% increase of mental health support. How would that come from in monetary terms?
Mental health support.
Yes, there's a 15% increase in your...
That's societal participation. So that was, so 15% increase in societal participation was that particular point. I'd like to do that because I think it's just one of the most primary ways that we can help solve the loneliness crisis and also include so many students that may be a little bit more shy, a little bit more hesitant about taking part in all of the fantastic opportunities we have here in Sheffield.
Where would the money come from specifically?
So actually, I think this is one of the most it has many low-cost solutions, in fact, many free solutions. So, for example, educating and putting more emphasis on teaching the resident mentors up in Endcliffe, which are doing such a good job to really push students and really encourage and support them as they go into their new student life, and really sort of suggesting societies that they can join. Obviously, there'll be a advertising element to this around the SU and on the SU website, and just in the way that we speak to students when they come in, like through departmental approaches as well.
Thank you. Josh, you have said that you want to abolish resit fees for disadvantaged students. How would you determine what a disadvantaged student is?
So the university already classifies what a disadvantaged student is, and those are the students that receive university bursaries. So any student that receives a university bursary will be eligible for an abolished resit fee. I think it's only right that every student deserves the opportunity to have a second chance, and no one should be held back from that. Simple.
Thank you.
That's a great policy, by the way, and I like that you're bringing the issues of bursary receiving students to like the forefront of the debate as well. I appreciate that.
Oh, don't worry. That was basically what I was going to say.
Dom, Lillian Jones, who was the SC president in 2018 to 19, had a similar idea that is in your manifesto about housing our reputable landlords, and created a website at the end of her term last year with little uptake. What is going to be different about yours?
So I think you're referring to Smart Move? Yeah, okay.
It's marks out of tendency.
Oh, so there's the union also has a website which it co-runs with the university. But the difference is it's about giving people the opportunity to directly review their landlords and letting agents. And that is how you hold them accountable.
That's actually what Marks Out of Tenancy does. It's like a service that Lillian advertised when she was in the role, which was where people, like students, can just upload details about their landlords and like give them a mark out of 10 and see.
So, Beth, by launching an inquiry, which you said you wanted to do in your manifesto, am I correct there? You said that you wanted to launch an inquiry about lowering plastic solutions.
Oh, yeah.
And assuming like lessening and getting rid of leaflets and other forms of plastic advertising, how would you replace leaflets and other what?
I mean, this is a big question. I mean, like Dom said, like even big political parties still use leaflets, but I think we've got some of the best brains in the country in this university. Like, why can't we utilise the projects that they're working on, even if it's just creating more sustainable leaflets? I think the amount that we get is worrying, and it's not good.
Thank you. Fleur, you have stated that in your manifesto that you want to introduce solar panels. How much would it cost, and what steps would you take for approval of solar panels?
So solar panels are a really, really exciting way that the SU can become more sustainable. It takes approximately 9.5 years to repay the full price of the solar panels, which is a fantastic investment long term, and actually will bring in a very small amount of revenue over time. I'm not entirely sure on how much they'll cost, just because I don't know the surface area of the roof or exactly how the sun would orientate on the SU roof. However, I think this is a very practical aim, and it's a really nice solution to some of our problems here.
Can I just ask you a question on that?
Of course.
So my climate policy is to lobby the university to switch to green and sustainable and renewable energies throughout all of the buildings.
This is like taking a step
so
in that.
In terms of the SU's financial state at the moment, do you think it's wise, rather than investing heavily right now, given it's running at a deficit, on solar panels, or do you think it's better well spent switching to these energies instead?
See, I would argue that it's much better making this investment because it's more of a long-term solution, in my personal opinion.
Okay, thank you. So what is your key policy that you think would make you the best president? Josh?
What I've noticed about all my policies is they don't cost a penny. So, like I talk about the whole deficit thing at the moment, completely free. It's our relationship with the university. So, the policy which I think will make the presidency, shall we say, is the climate one. It is one which is not being addressed and is just full of hypocrisy. if people want to come to this university, they want to be able to trust the university and what the university says. And trust is a massive thing. So by lobbying the university to take action and live up to its word, we regain its trust. And we already have a good working relationship with the university. I saw that on Senate last year. It was the Vice Chancellor is willing to come up and have a chat with you about things. And he often had meetings with the officers when I was there. So, I think the climate one in changing to renewable and sustainable energies will really benefit not just our Students' Union, but our whole university campus as well.
Thank you. Dom, what is your best policy that would make you most suitable for president?
So I'm going to go a bit rogue here and pick one of my much smaller policies. It might not be it's not very big compared to some of my other policies, but the one I'm really passionate about is officer question time. Because I think in a functioning democracy, it's so important that you can hold your elected officers accountable, and that's why we have these debates. So you can question people on what they're doing and what they're doing. Josh is about to say we have this at council, I think.
Yes, I was just going to say at council we have officer accountability,
we do.
which then the room has an opportunity to ask questions.
Yes. But this is going to be for all students. And observers can come to council, you're right, but councillors are given speaking priority. And I think the priority should be our students. It shouldn't matter if you're a councillor or not. Your opinion is just as valid, as far as I'm concerned. And another thing we can do with this is we can host it in places like the Edge. So we can get first-year students, from the second they get to university, we can get them involved in our democratic process. And I think that's essential.
Beth, what about you?
So honestly, the one I'm most passionate about and that I feel like I'm doing the most with is the meet and greet service for domestic students. I know it's ambitious, but I really think that there's a need for it. After reading Dr. Katie Ellis's report, and I emailed her and asked for her consultation, it's something that's really essential, like more support when students first get here.
Thank you. Fleur, which one is yours?
The one I'm most excited about. I propose to make Ecosia the default search engine around the university, which is such a simple, easy, completely free thing that we can do. And the most exciting thing for me about it is that we can implement it probably really rapidly. It's such an easy switch to make, and it will make such a big difference. For you, those of you who are not aware, Ecosia is a search engine, and for every so many searches, it plants trees.
Thank you. This has been night one of your election debates for your councillors. These have been your potential president officers, and I'm going to throw it back to Will in the studio.
Oh boy, that was getting a bit feisty in there. I hope you enjoyed that as much as we did. I'm here joined with the lovely Rosie and the lovely Jordan. We're going to jump straight into this. So sustainability is a massive, massive part of their manifestos. And we covered this a lot, especially the climate crisis. How do you think they came across in how they want to tackle this massive issue?
I think one of the main debates that I saw play out on that seemed to be between Beth and Dom about like this issue of leafletless campaigns, right, and like paper usage. I don't think perhaps it's the most interesting axis of the climate crisis we could be talking about, but it's where the discussion led. I think actually a leafletless campaign is a really good idea, not just for sustainability issues, but I know a lot of people have a really sorry, we're being shouted out off our screen, have a really difficult time basically just accessing the concourse during elections, right? Having leaflets thrust in your face, it's actually just difficult to get from A to B. So I think from a welfare standpoint as well, that's actually a really decent idea to try and introduce a more kind of approachable, accessible way of campaigning by getting rid of leaflets.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would go down well with a lot of students. I think we do get a lot of leaflets. You think of the fairs, these campaigns, freshers fairs. Throughout the year, there's a lot of leaflets, and no one really wants to be kind of bundled with too many, and it can get a bit hectic. So I definitely like the idea of a leafless campaign. In this day and age, there's other ways of being able to advertise and promote things, so it's a good idea.
It's obviously good to look at these smaller things in terms of the climate crisis, like leaflets, but I believe it was Fleur that brought up the idea of solar panels in the SU as well. What do you make of, since they only have a 1-year role, them trying to give these bigger plans? Because, like, historically, the president role has been like, give these empty promises. But we've seen, like, this year, you know, the president actually coming out with, like, £1 bus fares and a music festival. Do you think solar panel implementation would be feasible?
I think one thing that presidents can definitely do in their role, and you mentioned with the £1 bus fare, is at the very least sort of lay the groundwork for these bigger plans for people to then pick up in later years. Like, so I've been a student for a very long time now, and the £1 bus fares has been an issue ever since my first year at university, and it's actually been the work of successive presidents setting up this this precedent, basically, that's enabled this to be a fight that we keep on winning. So I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with looking at bigger, more kind of blue sky thinking kind of ideas like that. When at the very least, like, if she can lay the groundwork for that, get work in place, even if it's not done in the 1-year term, if she has a predecessor who's interested in carrying on those plans, I see no reason why solar panels couldn't be a thing we could achieve.
Yeah, it's ambitious. I personally wouldn't see it happening in 1 year. But as you said, if the groundwork is laid, it's whether the next president is kind of happy to pick up on that and continue it. But if they were, then yeah, it's something that could happen in multiple years. We'll have to wait and see. Obviously, if they win, if that can kind of come of anything.
I do think it's nicer as well to see people thinking on a more kind of institutional scale about where we're like getting our energy sources from as well. And it'd be nice to see people sort of turn that eye towards university and look at where they're getting their energy from too.
I think blue sky thinking is very relevant in terms of talking about solar panels.
I was very pleased with myself for that one.
Now, moving on, they talked a bit about the postgrad and mature student role that was brought up. And there was a lot of talk about how this would be funded. Do you think this is something that's needed?
This is a really interesting question because I think the question of what more SU officers we need, it's actually been a live one again for like years in the history of the Students' Union. Just before I came to university, I think a year or two before, there was a referendum on whether we were going to have a BME officer. And actually sort of when we've had discussions about the kind of representation we need on the officer level in the SU, it's normally focused around needing a BME officer. Personally, I think this is actually a massive gap in our SU officer team. I think it's an issue that's, really overlooked in the university. And so for me, from Dom, I didn't see enough justification as to why to preference a mature and postgrad student role over a BME role. And I say that as a postgrad and mature student.
Yeah, interested to see whether postgrads, how much importance they would place on having kind of that officer, whether they themselves would kind of need it. Maybe it's something to put to postgrads and to see whether it's something they'd be interested in having. So it's an interesting idea. I agree, I'm not sure he'd sold it enough. But again, we'll have to wait and see if he gets in.
There were simply so many points from that debate. It was a scorcher, but we are running out of time right now. But if you do want to look back at this, this will be available once we've ended, and also available on forgetoday.com/elections. We will be back here same time again tomorrow, same place, where you will see the other half of all of the officer roles that are coming up. But until now, goodbye. Bye.